Lemohang, thank you so much for accepting this invitation. We have heard so much about you, especially from Fradik, because Fradik is always recommending us films to watch, especially films from the African continent.
No, I'm happy for the invitation. Yeah, I'm just so happy to talk to you, and and of course, Fredrik is a very dear friend of mine, and he has been nothing but an inspiration to me because I live in Berlin, and most of the time I don't necessarily even go to cinema that much, or even talk about cinema that much like I used to. Whether I go for exhibition or performances, a bit more towards art in general. And not that I was bent out or not that I was bored with cinema, but I guess maybe there's a part of it that was I was sort of bored with it. And then when Freddy came to Berlin, he sort of resurrected, that zeal, that fire, that passion of cinema, and then we started to really talk about have a good wine and talk about cinema and talk about the future, whether the future of cinema in whether in regard to our countries or Africa, or whether it's just our worldview as far as the staging of African films in the world stage, and I was talking about it in terms of politically, socially. So this was really amazing to have him next to me to really bring life back to me.
You are a self-taught filmmaker, and you are from Lesoto, and you are currently based in Berlin. Your film, Mother, I'm Suffocating, is something that I feel comes from so many places. Is this the way that you do cinema in a way that is very expressive, in a way that is very personal to you?
This film was very specific,
Mm.
as far as as far as how my feelings were expressed, and the medium it became automatically it became what it is because of the agency that I was feeling at that time.
Mm.
Because the film is sort of embodiment of everything that I hate. It's
Oh, okay.
as much as I think of it as an lament, or it's almost like it's a love letter that is expressed backward with vile things. So it expressed with vomit. It expressed with hate. It expressed with self-loathing. It expressed with um, yeah, with in vulgarity, um, because of what I was going through. What I was going through at that time. Um, if you look at the organ, for instance, I actually hated organ when I was a kid. I grew up in a traditional, I think it was Calvinist church, Methodist church,
Mhm.
um, where my grandmother used to be a member, and my mother, of course, early on. So I used to go to this church, LEC, and they used to have this organ there that used to drive me crazy as a child. I hated the sound of organ, and that's why in the film, I think that I actually it was not necessarily about the organ, but it was about how it was used at that time. It felt oppressive for me. It reminded me of being confined because now every time as a kid you're at the church, you're waiting, you cannot wait until the church is over, so you're stuck in it. The sound of organ for me was very oppressive.
Mhm.
And then I in the film, that's why it's a distorted, it's a broken organ that I used in the film. And I wanted to express, of course, it had to do with my childhood memories, and I wanted to express that rage within the things that I hate. So the film is almost like this embodiment of things that I hate.
Oh, okay. I see.
That's another way of thinking of it. There's also many other ways
Mm.
of thinking about this film. Yeah.
How was your film received in Lesotho at that
Mm,
time?
I think well, but I didn't experience it. That's the thing. I wasn't there. I wasn't there. So that's a sad part that I wasn't there to experience it with people. But I know that with people that have seen it, there's always there's a good feedback that people really appreciate the work. I was a bit nervous with how they will see the film,
Mm.
um, how Africans living here will see the
Mhm.
film, and how living in Africa, how they will see the film.
Oh yeah,
This was
because you're
what
dealing with the different perspectives and different realities as well.
I was yeah, because I mean, it's people that I'm speaking with,
Oh,
and
okay.
then yeah, and I think that the fear was that they would hate it so much that it'll be one of those films that you watch that you feel like you're even embarrassed for the person who made the film. You're embarrassed for them. It's so appalling.
Mm. But I think
So
you've done a good job, to be honest,
thank you.
because I feel like yes, this is something that's a piece that's part of you, you know? It's something that's personal to you. But I feel like with cinema, it also helps us stay connected. What art form did you first get in touch with to broaden your imagination and the idea of telling the stories through film?
Mm. Um, I think poetry, poetry. I mean, at that time, I didn't even see it as an art. I think poetry was one of the mediums that it was something that came natural to me. I think it came natural because of Lesotho. It's our language. It's heavily it's heavy poetry.
Mm,
It's prose. It's literally poetry. It's when people talk. It's I could break down every sentence that people talk. It's so poetic. It's so well constructed, and I feel like so. This is has always been poetry has always been ingrained in our
mm.
culture because
Okay.
our cultural music, it's a poetry. Our cultural every clan or every ethnic group in Lesotho has their own poetry, family poetry.
Mm,
So the idea of a poetry has always been a culturally medium available, and that I think everybody from Lesotho somehow one or another, you know what to recite. You there's some lines that you can recite. So this was a natural progression, getting into the poetry. Also, my grandmother, uh, and also our cousins or people who were part of a family when I was young, they brought the oral literature and the oral poetry,
mm,
the verbal arts of narrating a story, whether it's somo or whether it's diloto. It's another form of oral poetry and oral sort of arts,
mm.
um, or literature. So I grew up in that rich um, um, language of poetry. And painting was never, I think, one medium that was that I encountered was the photography, but it was not in the level where I would inspire to do it. If you're a photographer, when I was growing up, you were called a photo man, like who is going around town with the maybe seven cameras around his neck, and it was just so common. It was just so it didn't seen as art. It was seen as just a guy who takes photos. So this was not appealing to me. So it's another form of photography that I actually liked when I was a kid, especially with those photos that are like shot on film. and there's so much beauty that came with those photographs because they will have this beautiful backgrounds of different things, whether it's nature or whether it's just a landscape, and then the people will pose, or they will take their photos next to the flower and pose in the flower. These were beautiful photographs, and that but the way the presentation or the medium or the person who was taking them, he was not uplifted. He was not withheld in a high regard in society. So this was the medium that I actually liked, but I didn't pursue. But cinema, when I encountered cinema, it was something special because the cinema when I was growing up, it was an event. It was not just going to see movies in cinema. No, it was the whole a cultural event. Like when people go watch soccer, for us who watch movies, it was like as big as soccer. That people would watch movies, and sometimes you're watching a film, and someone saw the film last week or a few days ago. He will narrate the film while we are watching it, and we'll have a hard time shutting him off. So this was the excitement.
How do you see film as not only as an entertainment tool, but also as a learning tool?
Hmm. Mm. Yeah, I mean, I've always believed that I think the art itself or the medium itself will become faithful to you once you are truthful. Um, I don't create from the place where I create because there's something I want to do something political. I don't think like that. I don't think of it as this has to be in it because of for political reasons. But I try to stay with the ideas and be faithful to the ideas. And for some reason, it always does lead me somewhere where it leads me to a place of beauty. I'm so grateful to be a filmmaker and be able to that I'm still, of course, learning to let go, learning to know that it's sometimes it's just beyond me. Sometimes it's not what I think um, should be what the film should be about, what should film focus on. Obviously, I'm a political person. I think it's very easy that my way of thinking spills politically thinking spills over my work, even if I don't intend to. I think there is a part of it that is spilling over my work, and also I think being a black body in a foreign country where you're a migrant, well, not even you're a migrant, but if you are in a different space, um, there is a political way of seeing things, and the idea of politics it's broad as well. So I always feel like maybe staying with the ideas and staying being true to ideas, the ideas would actually would become faithful to you, and everybody's invited. And I'm thankful when people can relate with the film, with the story, with the drawings. They can relate in their own personal life, and that's why I appreciate this medium of art. That it's not just who we think we're talking to, but it could also talk to many other people.
So you've also worked in other projects, and I was wondering if the other projects also have this, personal aspect of you.
Yeah, yes, they all of them. I think there is a part of me, even if there is one film called The Tears of Blood, El Khapazamadi, that was influenced by of a thriller sort of um, it's super interesting. It's super interesting because the film was about a water crisis where now people have turned into water lords. people have now have control, they have supremacy of on water. And there is also a spiritual element of a mysticism, a sort of mysticism that I play around in the film. And there's also gangsterism that's going on in the film, as far as the trade of water, as far as the gangs. So this was, if I think there was based on 5 stories. This was the most ambitious project ever, or anything that I ever done. This
Was
was
it a
my
short
first.
film or was
No,
it also
this was my feature film, my
okay?
first feature film,
Oh
first
wow.
film.
Okay.
So, so I eventually I fired everyone. I fired cinematographer. I fired a runner. I fired literally everyone. I mean, this is a cheap film done with nothing. I convinced the company that I was working for them. I said, guys, if you can fund my film, maybe provide food and camera. And then I worked for them, and there was sort of a deal that we made, and then that's how I ended up having a camera to shoot. And eventually, I ended up doing everything, even being a stunt double, or not even a stunt double, but being a character, but not you don't see my face. I end up being a runner, I end up being a sound person, I end up being a photographer, a cinematographer, I end up being a director. I was an editor, I was a producer, I was everything. And after the film it's done, I was sick, I was done. I lay down on the bed for I think for 2 days. I couldn't move. I couldn't move my body. Spiritually, I was drained. Emotionally, psychologically, physically, I was broken. And I remember lying down on the bed that I knew that after this, I would do something better. This was so profound feeling. It was a very spiritual feeling that I knew after this, I'm gonna be better. Like I knew after that, I know everything. When I was lying down, I had it was a supreme confidence of what I'm gonna do next. It's gonna surpass this, way surpass this.
Wow.
So this is one of the film that has been very treasured to me. Even when I was doing it, I didn't know about the festivals that they exist. I was making it for my community, um, and even the other films. I remember before after that I did like a experimental film, and I didn't even know this experimental film. There's something the medium of experimental film. It's super experimental. It's like it was everywhere. But when I look at it now, I'm like, wow, this was actually beautiful work. So this is where I sort of, you know, started to make films. But then they somehow end up being in my IMDb.
Yes.
And
Everyone sees it.
they've been seen by like maybe 2 or 3 people, you know.
Oh, that's amazing. If you were to suggest us African films, what would they be?
Fredik's film,
Mhm.
A Conditioner, and also will recommend Osman film, The Black Girl,
Mm.
and of course Haina Jabril Diop. I would say Alangomi film, Felicia.
Felicite.
Felicia.
Yes, yes. Felicite. Oh, that's amazing.
Now I have so many ideas in my head, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
figure out why I'm recommending it as well. So
Mm.
that's why I'm thinking, you know, because there's so many films in my head, but I need to think why I'm recommending it.
Is there anything that you're looking forward to with regards to your work or with regards with African cinema in itself?
Yeah, I think it's what I'm excited about is now because last films my translation was I was aware who's gonna watch my film. Of course, France, and of course people from Lesotho, and also other African, and also the crowd that goes to the festivals in Europe. And and my subtitles had to do with this realization of who's going to see my film, especially when the film is showing the festivals. So my subtitles are, for instance, in Lesotho, if you say we don't have "How are you," we don't have "How do you do," we don't use those words. We use different words. And sometimes when we translate our films, we kill the poetry.
That reminds me of a movie from Jim Jarmusch. I don't know the name of it. I forgot. Patterson.
Patterson. No, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's about poetry as well. But then there's this guy. He says, if you translate poetry, it's like you're showering with a raincoat on, you know? Yeah.
Yes, that's very true. Like, and I remember when I had a friend of mine do Philip, that guy, and he did a great job. He did a great job translating my work. He's amazing in Sotho and in poetry and in writing. I remember one thing that I remember when I saw because we were running out of time, and I when I saw it, the translation, I was so. Yeah, I feel like I did a disservice. I think I've trying to simplify things, but I feel like I took away
the essence.
Yeah, yeah, it was catering for people to understand, but I feel like in that way I robbed them. I remember looking at the subtitles, seeing that it's translated, that it's interpreted, but not translated.
Okay.
And of course it reduces words into a mere greeting. It reduces a powerful words that has to do with the cosmos, that has to do with the creation of the world, that has to do with how people see each other in a truest spiritual way. But I reduce it into how are you? And that's not our greeting. Our greeting is more deeper than that. Recognizing your cosmic alignment when we greet each other. And with the next work, I want to try to be as pure, because the audience, whether it's the European audience or African audience, they're so intelligent. If the person speaks a language that, even if it's now you translate it exactly how it's supposed to sound, there are sometimes where you cannot do it. There's no words for that. I think not to reduce it, but rather bring another complicated work that is similar to what the person is actually talking about.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, I think it's the like what I was talking about earlier. Also, it's the to be able to be in a community with other filmmakers, from the country, and having conversation like with Frederic. Most of the time when we meet, we have a beautiful conversation, but it's all based on the love that we have for our countries, and I think this is so contagious.
Okay.
And to have this community of filmmakers, not just even filmmakers, but also curator, who have so much zeal for for the storytelling in the continent, and this makes me alive. This makes me want to do more.
Yes.
Yeah, because you are part of something big. You're part of the big family
Yeah.
of African creators, or yeah.
It would be amazing for us to receive you in Luanda if you ever get the chance to visit.
I would love to come.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys have one of the most beautiful countries. So thank you for the connection that now I'm here talking to you.
Thank you so much, Lemohang.